when a cowboy spits in a spittoon, mishpatim. I don't know why that came to my mind. It just did. Yeah, that's got to have some Kabbalah, deep meaning there somewhere. We'll figure it out one day. There is this Torah portion is really interesting because there's a lot of Torah laws given at this time. And let me take this. Got a vitamin C in my mouth and it's not going away. There's a lot of laws given in this section, and we're just kind of enumerate an outline of the laws or the sections that are talked about, and then we can kind of dive in, and you guys can say, well, what about this, or what about that, or I read this, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on. We all know the routine. It's going to be the text of this is going to be in let's try to find the chapter and verse. Give me the chapter and verse, somebody, real quick.
This one starts in Exodus chapter 21, verse 1.
Okay. So overview goes like this. The first section that we have, as we all know, the Parsha is divided into several different aliyahs, right? There are separate readings for each day. So we're just going to go first, second, third, fourth aliyah that way. The second, let's do a start over. Now I can talk right. Sandy's here.
Take two.
The first section, or the first aliyah, is going to be dealing with the laws pertaining to the Israelite servant, which often for postmodern people, they don't understand this idea of servants and why it was such an emphasis to have laws on the servant. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of talk from biblical detractors that say, well, I can't believe in a God that would believe in slavery. But we all know that this slavery in this time is not the same slavery that we have had throughout many generations all across the world that still exists to this day. And that is cruel and unusual punishment of slavery. There are laws laid out in this thing that is called slavery in the Torah is more in the lines of employment. It would be like today's modern employment laws that are in place in our society. You know, we have laws now that you can't work a child for, so many hours. If, like, for an actor or an actress, a child actor or actress has to only be able to work so many hours before they get a break. I mean, there are employment laws out there. So if you're going to put it in that mindset, think about what a slave is at this time. It's mandatory to release a slave after 6 years of service. And the procedure following that, a servant expresses a desire to remain in the master's service. Therefore, he can remain. But then they would talk about taking his ear and putting a nail through that to pierce his ear, in some way marking him for the rest of his life, that he wants to be a slave. The Torah continues with the laws of the Israelite maidservant, her terms of release, other laws containing this in this first aliyah, a section on husbands' obligation to their wives, a punishment for murder, manslaughter, kidnap, and abusing parents, and the penalties occurred by a person who injures another. Many of these laws also have direct connection to the Noahide laws as well. We have said this on several different occasions with individuals that just come into studying the Noahide laws. They would go, well, where are all the laws listed? We have to remember, we call the 7 mitzvot, the Sheva mitzvot, they are 7 categories, meaning that there are follow on list of laws that are associated to the categories. And so when we say in this aliyah is laws that are pertaining, obviously given to the Israelites, but there are Sheva mitzvot that go back to these laws. For example, murder, punishment, manslaughter, etc. What's, abusing your parents, the penalties that occur. All those things are connected to different Noahide laws. The next aliyah, the section would continue with the laws of personal injury, punishment for one who kills or injures a servant, and for one who causes a woman to miscarry. Very interesting context of laws that we now actually kind of find in Western society pretty closely follows. The Torah then shifts its focus to a person's liabilities or damages caused by his possession, such as an ox goring a neighbor or a neighbor's ox, or their animals end up in a fight and one gets destroyed, how to sort of mitigate these civil matters. And a person who steals is liable to pay capital plus punitive damages. So one of the things that I've often said, I wonder if we would have real justice in our laws if we required the person who stole from another person to not only have punitive damages, but also would have to pay back the value plus what they stole. Now that would be true justice. A lot of times, someone is burglarized or robbed, and there's no recourse for the victim in this situation. Maybe an insurance company, but who knows? It depends on their insurance. The third aliyah deals with an arsonist is liable for damages caused by fire that he ignites on purpose, or even an accident, but ignites a fire and destroys somebody else's property. They're liable. The Torah then details the potential liabilities of individuals who undertakes to be the guardian or of another man's possession or borrows it. For example, I borrow Rob's power tool and I have to return that thing to him without it being broken. And if I broke that item, then I would need to return the value of that item back to him. It's absolutely wrong to do it. It's theft at that point. There are more laws. The punishment for seducing a young woman, sorcery, bestiality. These are sexual sin laws. Once again, going back to the B'nai Noach, the laws of sexual immorality. A lot of the definition of Torah sexual immorality is laid out right here. The fourth aliyah introduces us to a couple of new mitzvahs. The prohibition against cursing a judge or a leader, consuming meat that has not been ritually slaughtered. This would be, obviously for the Jew, we understand what that is, proper shechting of an animal, but also the whole idea that this animal being someone eating of an animal offered a sacrifice before the animal is 8 days old. There's a whole set of laws for that. There's perjury, judicial corruption, the commandments to separate all agricultural ties in their proper order, sanctifying the firstborn son, and return a lost animal to its owner and help unload an overburdened animal. So this whole idea of making sure that we don't overburden the animal. One of the first things that I learned coming into Judaism, and I have animals, a lot of you guys have those, that it's not proper to eat your food before you feed your animals. Like, I found that like incredible that Hashem cares so much for his creation that he asked the higher levels of creation to make sure you take care of the ones that you have possession of first before you eat. And it's a good thing. I think it's positive. God informs the Israelites that he would dispatch an angel to lead them to Canaan. The angel would not tolerate disobedience. If, however, the Israelites would hearken to the angel, eradicate idolatry from the promised land, then they will be greatly rewarded. Obviously, there's a warning that goes there. The last aliyah of our parsha The section continues to describe the blessings the Israelites will receive by faithfully serving God. They will have no miscarriages, disease like the Egyptians. Women would not be barren, longevity, wide, spacious borders, supernatural assistance from Hashem. So it paints a beautiful picture of the result of what do you call obedience. I'm not sure I like using the word obedience because it change. I don't know. Something about it kind of sounds real Christian-y to say they needed to obey God. But it is obedience at some level, but it's not the twisted form. Anyway, that concludes the summary. Why don't we get into the text itself? I'll open the floor up. Does anybody have anything that you would like to bring up or talk about before we go? Ross, go ahead.
Right out, just fresh off the press, so to speak. I just made this observation. At this point, we're just right at 6 weeks since they had left Egypt. Moses has not gone up the mountain for the first set of tablets just yet. But what was interesting is the first thing that is dealt with right off the bat is how you deal with your slaves. Okay? How appropriate. 6 weeks ago, you were slaves, and here the first thing you're going to learn is how to deal with them in your new land. Oh, you're muted. Just an observation.
I knew that. I was just checking, making sure you were doing your job right. You're doing really good. Yeah, you're right. It's like right off the bat, they're required to examine how they treat others that were in the same situation they were in. That's good. Anybody want to comment on that or have anything you would like to say starting off? Who would like to start?
I was looking at this in the spiritual context this week, and just a couple things I'll just read about slavery. It says, if we don't desire growth, then we are slaves to complacency. So we can make our own selves slaves.
Oh, yes.
And then I liked when it talked about some of the different, like kidnapping. Because anytime we take over or try to control someone else's life, we're taking a hostage. I never thought about that before. They just.
Where did you read that at?
I am reading out of Yehuda Berg's Technology for the Soul.
Oh, very interesting.
And
that really is real good. There's got to be more. What do you have?
Lots more. I just highlighted a couple. There's a consequence to everything we do. If we start a fire and it burns someone else's property or hurts another person in any way, we're responsible for the effects.
Wow. Isn't that what Lashon Hara is? Where you start a fire against another person and destroy their character. Wow.
This is just a few of them that I highlighted. It just really spoke to me because so many times we read this and we read the the part that pertains to this realm, and we don't look for that pertains.
No, I totally understand that. I think one of the biggest goals in my own personal development has been of late becoming more, what's the word for it? Self-aware, like careful of how you say things, because even the way you communicate with someone, you can in some way manipulate and enslave them by your words. Like I don't think people realize tones of voices and the way you lay things out can capture a person and do harm to them. And those are called refining small things in your life that are, to me, are very important, like really important. I really appreciate you bringing that up. Absolutely. We could run down that road and there are so many parallels to that.
I just find myself more and more watching my words, seeing if I should say something at this point or just be still. this year, this Parsha has become more real to me than ever. Or
That's
I ever
good.
dreamed.
Right. These are actually what you're indicating, and what the book is talking about in spiritual technology is, even though these laws are pretty practical civil laws, they also have a very spiritual application to them, a personal growth application. Tar? Tar, you're muted. Your microphone's not on or something. Go to your settings where it says mute, and click the arrow that points up and see if it's on your set for your built-in microphone. When you get it, let me know. All you have to do is just jump in and interrupt. Anybody want to add to that, Rabbi Avner?
About the slave, the rule is that the slave, I mean Jewish slave, Hebrew slave, it's not sold, his body is not sold, only the labor. That's a big distinction. And if you look at the Talmud there, when it counts all the rights of the slave, so-called slave, actually the Talmud make a comment, famous comment, that the person who buys, so to speak, such a slave for his work, actually he actually purchased a master on his own, on himself. I give you an example. You have to treat the slave so carefully, with dignity. You cannot even tell him to take your towel, to carry your towel to the public bathroom. You cannot, because you will be humiliated if you carry your towel after you. So Hebrew slave is completely, shouldn't be confused with regular slave, with what the Roman slave was. Now I want to another thing. At the beginning of the parsha, it says, "These are the laws that you will lay out to them." Very important segment, verse here. Rashi says, "What do you mean you lay out?" Give you an example. If you have people coming to your house, you set up a table for them. You put up spoon, plates, bowls, paper, salt, and you make sure that you prepare everything that can consume your food. Which means the oral Torah was given to Moses here to explain along with the written Torah. And that's called Shulchan Aruch. Rashi says, like layout table, it's Shulchan Aruch. In fact, the Jewish law, oral Torah law, is compiled by a famous book, Shulchan Aruch, come from here. Now, to sum up what does the oral Torah say? So the whole Torah is hovering over the entire parsha. You cannot judge it just by reading it. You have every law that is mentioned here. You have to consider also how Moses laid out orally to them, which means now the oral Torah just give you three ways the oral Torah can do. It can explain, or elaborate, or it can override, like tooth for a tooth, for eye for an eye. It overrides it, or it can uproot it. It can actually, the oral Torah has such a power, according to the Vilna Gaon, and you have example from each one of them here in the Parsha, according to Vilna Gaon. The oral Torah is so powerful that they can actually uproot. I'll give you an example. The Torah says, do not to the court, do not make a judgment by the majority.
Right.
Well, we know that just the opposite. So the oral Torah says it uprooted, according to the Vilna Gaon, and it says, oh, it's not written. But the oral Torah says, you of course you follow the rule of the majority because it is smart. It's a common sense to do. And how do they know that people have common sense? We go back to what we learned in our class Monday, that in Eden, and that's why I'm bringing it up. In Eden, when Adam was made before the sin, he had a smart man. He had a mind. He knew what right from wrong, and because all mankind came, that's what Professor Leibovich says. That he explained Gaon Vilna, and he says because mankind was in Adam, the first Adam was in Eden, and he became smart in Eden, and so we all share the common sense that override. Think about it. It override the written Torah, and it empower the oral Torah. It's unbelievable statement. To study it in depth, of course, we need to more than that.
You said, so I'm trying to go back and you said this on Monday, and it was conveyed to me, and I really spent some time thinking about it. You said Adam knew right from wrong before he ate of the tree. That wasn't the issue, right? You said that knowing right and wrong is not the same as knowing good and evil.
Yes.
And right and wrong are not the same as good and evil. I mean, I have really contemplated that every day. Like, that is a very true statement that often gets confused with each other, don't they?
Yes, absolutely.
That's incredible. I really like that statement. I mean, it just causes you to say, they were never intended to know good and evil, right?
In Eden.
In Eden, yeah. But to know good and evil outside of that.
They were given the option to live the entire human history without being exposed to evil.
Right. Wow.
They could know maybe evil theoretically, even let know, but they didn't have it. Evil means that, death and sorrow and pain, and that in Eden they didn't have any clue what it was.
That's really good. Anybody want to add to this or change the subject a little bit? I do find it interesting in that verse, where it says, "And that you shall set before them." Rashi really lays it out as being the great example of oral Torah and how it should be taught, like 2 or 3 times over and over until they get it down, like laid it out like a great dinner. Like, you just didn't throw something on the table, but it was a full explanation as to how the laws work and what they're going to do. It's incredible. And you said that from the quote from Mechilta Eruvim 54b. It says like a table set with food. Yeah. Also, I think before you came into the class, I'd mentioned that slavery here is in the context more of employment.
There was no jail.
Right.
And a slave, why it was sold, usually was sold by the court, because he owed money, he did something wrong, he has to pay his due.
Right. That's how they would do it. Could you imagine having a thief have to work for the person he stole from for 6 months to pay off the debt? That's how it worked.
Not necessarily for the same person, but you could say it was sold for whoever wanted him, but the money the
would go
cost-
back to the,
cost pay back to the person who owned the money.
let's see, Tar's coming back into the room. Maybe he figured it out. Ross, did you have something you were raising your hand for? Well, Mary, your hand is up. Did you leave it up? Oh, okay. We lower the hand for you. Okay. Let's go skip on down a little bit. We're
Did,
talking about the slave, obviously being a Hebrew. I love my master, my wife, my children. I will not go free. His master shall bring him the judges, and he shall bring them to the door of the doorpost. His master shall bore his ear with an awe, and he shall serve him forever. This was not, according to the way I understand it, an admirable thing to do. Like, why would a Hebrew want to be a slave to anybody but Hashem himself? It just really is an interesting idea.
You are slave to me
Right.
and not somebody else.
Right. And for you to choose to be a slave of someone else is akin to walking away from Hashem's authority or something, right?
Yes.
Now it also here's a man who sells his daughter as a maidservant. Tard, you're back on? No, we can't hear you. Your microphone needs to be configured. Go down to the bottom where it has the mute button and hit that arrow and see if it's on. It should be probably set up built-in microphone. See if you have it on built-in microphone. Excuse me, I have to sneeze. Hold on. Well, I thought I had to sneeze. Tar, try it again. Nothing? Okay. Just interrupt us when you get ready to start. Let's see. A man sells his daughter as a maidservant. She shall not go free as a slave goes free. Now, why in the world is that? The scripture is referring to a minor, a girl that's a minor. And when she's obviously going to be able to show signs of puberty at some point and grow up.
Hello.
Yes. Okay, Tar, you got it. Go ahead.
Okay, is it working now?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Oh, well, I didn't mean to interrupt y'all or whatever.
No, that's all right. No, go ahead.
Okay, now, verse 22:19, one who brings offerings to the gods shall be destroyed, only to Hashem alone. And in the commentary, it was talking about, according to Rambam, Elohim in this verse refers to angels, for it is a capital offense to worship any force or a combination of forces, even the angel of Hashem. And of all, so many of us coming from Christianity, we worship the angel, angel, go before me and make my safe, I mean, is that considered idol worship or?
Oof, look, this whole thing of that you find in sort of new age spiritualism is an adoration of angelic. It's called angelology or whatever. It's where they have their favorite angel and it's a spirit guide and they talk to the spirit guide and the spirit guide guides them. That's idolatry. Just flat out, that's idolatry. I don't know that Christians kind of do the thing where, they command the angels to do X, Y, Z. You've heard of that.
Yeah.
They command the angels to bring us money, command the angels to, fix a way. It's very dangerous. And it's something that we just don't do. I mean, it's idolatry. Now, Rabbi Avner probably has an insight on that, but according to the laws of idolatry, anything that has been ascribed as a deity is a god or an idol, right? So the question is I don't know. The whole idea of just communicating with angels is, I don't know. It's just weird to me. I would stay away from something like that.
Well,
Rabbi,
I don't. Yeah. I mean, I don't. Everything, even back when I was a Christian, my prayers went straight to Hashem. I
Right.
bypassed that other guy. And because he was the head man in charge. So
Right.
that's where I went straight to. So anyway, I
Absolutely.
appreciate
That's a
that.
good point. Good point, Ross. Rabbi, did you want to add something to that?
Oh, that was a wonderful discussion. You're absolutely right. Angel, you are not supposed to pray, or certainly not to offer any sacrifice to angel. Not only that, not only to other God, but if you want to go up in a scale, in a letter here, if you can also read it, if you sacrifice only for God, you Elohim, and not YHBH. So if you separate the attribute and you say, "Oh, I worship only mercy," that's also forbidden. You cannot pray merciful, oh merciful one, attribute, forgive me, help me. No, you pray to one God, which is two of them together. So on a scale here, you can go up from angel to any entity, up to the attribute themselves.
Now,
So-
can I ask you something real quick? Now, let's say that you're having hit by the personal prayer, and you say, God, I appeal to your mercy in this situation, blah, 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 blah. That's not actually that, is it? Worshiping the attribute?
No, that's not.
Okay,
God, God, the one God,
right.
please exercise your mercy on me. That's fine.
Okay.
But if you say, oh, attribute of mercy, help me. Or because Elohim is abrogated.
Yeah, see, even uttering those words sounds so strange, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you cannot say Elohim, the laws are obligated, and I now worship only mercy, and I pray only to mercy, and Elohim it's not really it's obligated. No, so you cannot separate the glue one.
That's good.
Glue together.
I've never even thought about that.
They call it the separation of the glued one. Remember the attribute, the glued one. So you separate them here. So here the verse can be read as we just said to angel, any other angel or demons or whatever, or even Satan, of course, is forbidden to believe in. Not only good angel, but bad angel. There is no such thing as a independent Satan that you hear or you pray or to talk to. That's idolatry, absolute idolatry.
Wow.
This was one of the most difficult in my career over so many years. This was one of the most difficult things that people had hard time to absorb. They were so, the idea of Satan, for instance, is so deeply rooted that I remember I was stunned how when I gave classes face to face, people sometimes stood up from the room and said, "No, it cannot be. What you say, Satan is a." They're so used to the Book of Revelation.
Right.
And the idea that Satan can be a white angel with baby face, with white wing, and his job is to be your prosecutor.
Right.
It's not Satan demon.
But isn't that in some way when a person constantly is talking about the power of Satan and what he can do and being as independent, that's idolatry.
Yes. Maybe, exactly. Satan is no independent power. There is what you call Yetzer Hara.
Mm-hmm.
Yetzer Hara is your inner drive that talk to you to do some sin. Actually, this will be our Monday class, next Monday class. We talk. So the Yetzer Hara, which is a serpent, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Serpent in Eden represents that power that entices you to do sin. And Satan ride over it like a camel. The Midrash says Satan is taking advantage of the Yetzer Hara and ride over it like a camel, because it means that if you succumb to your own Yetzer Hara inside your heart, if you succumb to it, say the angel or the prosecutor will grab it and bring it to the court.
Right.
So you provide a camel to Satan to ride over it to bring it to the court.
You know what
That's-
that reminds me of what we used to call in police work sting operations, and the cops would give a person opportunity to sell drugs or illegal weapons or whatever, and when they do it, they bust them for the crime because hey, they desired to do it, and then they will say, no, I didn't do it, the police made me do it, right?
Yeah.
But isn't
Yeah.
that what a lot of religious people do? They blame Satan for their own actions, right?
Yeah.
Ross, go ahead, and then we'll come back to you, Rabbi.
Okay, I just want to point out there was a question in the chat.
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe wanted, well, Karen had asked, does kidnapping fall under theft or murder? And
You typed yes.
yes, I seem to think it can fall under both categories. Yes.
Well, I would think it would be. It's for sure, but kidnapping could fall under theft or murder. Yeah, I mean, I would think so.
Yes. Just briefly, I wanted to make an observation that what we're reading here is seems to be an oral Torah, and I will explain. In the 10 Commandments, it says, "Thou shalt not steal," but here we're elaborated.
Right.
You know, if you take this, then you shall repay that. Do not commit sexual immorality. You shall not lie with an animal carnally. And so there's explanations here as to
Right.
what these terminologies are. So
Yeah, it seems like you give a tremendous amount of detail here.
it's categorically dealing with the 7 laws and giving you some oral background as to, well, what does it mean to not commit murder,
Right.
not steal.
Right. I mean, it takes us as far as verse 6, for example, of 22. He says, if a man gives a neighbor money or articles for safekeeping and is stolen from the man's house, if the thief is found, he's to pay twofold. Now, if the thief is not found, the homeowner shall approach the judges to swear that he did not lay a hand on his neighbor's property, which indicates a fiduciary responsibility to their neighbor's property. Even though they didn't steal it, they still have to go prove the fact they didn't. It says that for any sinful word, for a bull or a donkey, for a lamb or a garbage, you see the detail in that? Maybe I think you might be right. It sounds good.
It just goes on to say that a judge should not accept a bribe. So it's
Right.
dealing with courts of justice.
Yeah, I really like these. And if a man gives a neighbor a donkey or a bull or a lamb and any animal for safekeeping, and it dies, breaks a limb, or is captured, and no one sees it, here's the issue: the oath of the Lord shall be between two of them, provided that he did not lay his hand upon the neighbor's property and his owners accept it. I've got a situation right now where my neighbor's fence needs to be fixed, needs to be repaired. And I've done everything to keep the dogs from getting out of my yard into his yard, but he doesn't want to repair it. And it's in such disrepair at this point that I've even offered to pay half of it for him to repair it, trying to be a mensch. But I'm almost at the point where I'm going to have to end up paying to get the fence fixed if I want to get it fixed, right? Let's see, where else? Let's go on down. If an owner is with him, he is not to pay. Okay, so I'm sorry. If a person borrows an animal from his neighbor and breaks his limb or dies, if the owner is not with him, he shall surely pay.
If I
Why
may
do you-
say,
Go
if
ahead.
I may say here something, the Ramban in Book of Genesis, in the story of Dinah and she was raped there, city of Shem, he writes what Noahide should learn, should study. And he quotes this section here. He referred to a guardian, different liabilities, and he quotes this Parashat Mishpatim,
Interesting.
and he said that that's fall under the category of number 5, dinim, judges.
Judges. Okay.
The commandment, Noachide commandment number 5, and he says to learn it from here. He said, that's a famous, he said Noachide should go to yeshiva and learn the Talmud, the oral Torah, because what is written here is written Torah.
Right.
Although it explains what stealing is, but still it's written. The oral law that accompanied it is almost half of the Talmud.
Yeah, that is
So
interesting.
they need to learn. So remember, everything is written here, although it's explained, but it's still written.
Right.
It's not oral.
Right. So we've heard plenty of teachers, rabbis say, Noahide should only study what pertains to them. But in that language, they often don't reemphasize that so much of the Torah and oral Torah explains those things.
Explain and relate to them.
Right.
Under this category, relate to them. So almost everything relate to them. What do you mean relate to them?
Right. So that's why often people will hear that and go, oh, well, I'm only allowed to read the 7 categories. No, there's a whole Talmudic what do you call it? Discussions on Noahide issues. Steve, go ahead.
I have a question about a question.
Question about a question. Wow.
23:5. Now, again, I'm looking at the English, and then as you read it, it goes on to say, if you see a donkey of someone you hate crouching under a burden, would you refrain from helping him? That's the question.
Right.
Then it goes on with a hyphen to explain, you shall help repeatedly with him the donkey, or with him the person. And the question then becomes, does it really say that? Because if I'm reading this correctly, it can mean either you shall help him or you should just leave.
So Rashi answered that you need to help the donkey.
It's
And
not
that's-
about you. It's not about your enemy. It's about the donkey.
It's about donkey, and it's called Tsar Balei Chaim, and it's a misery of animals. There's a whole bunch of laws that fall under the category of reducing the hardship from animals. That's both. So even though it's your enemy, you still need to take care of his animal, because the animal shouldn't suffer because of you hate the owner. So you pay attention to the donkey, so now you will never know it. It's from the written Torah, you don't know, but you need to read the you need to read the oral Torah to understand that it's the animal. That's a good example how the oral Torah, which is not written here, it's hidden. The verse, you cannot understand it from the verse.
Well, you're right. Right. This is one of the many examples that the text.
Many examples.
Yes.
Now the oral Torah, you get lost.
Right. You would actually ask that question. Well, does this mean it's talking about the enemy, or is it talking about the donkey, or how do you surely help along with him? What does that mean to surely help? That means to lighten his burden, the animal's burden.
Yeah, Rashi said that.
Mm-hmm.
And Rashi is based on the oral Torah.
Right. That's a good. Did it answer the question, Steve? No.
Yeah, but then it also leaves the second question in your mind. What about the neighbor's animals who are suffering in the backyard because of whatever, the PETA rules and all of those other things that are happening?
Ooh, I think that you would I think that you would be obligated according to our law, wouldn't it? I would think so. Even according to our civil law. Like if you know that there's a dog in the back, for example, that has been left out in the snow and cold at night, and you could hear it wailing in the middle of the night, you would be obligated to do something, I would think.
The government should intervene.
Yeah. Yes, Tar, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe you don't go do something about it, but you're obligated to call the law.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a very important point. Yes. Very, very good point. And we have, there are these news reports of people who will have, anything from horses to dogs or whatever, and they're emaciated, they're not fed, not taken care of. And there are a lot of laws. Well, it's now a federal crime, I think, if you kill an animal without, or something like, if you hurt an animal, I can't remember what it is, but they can prosecute you under federal law. I knew a kid that was in my son's high school class that's now in prison for taking and slaughtering a puppy, smashing it with a brick. And he went to prison for it. So it's a very serious crime to do that. Steve?
Can you help me with another section, which is in 23 verses 14 on down to about 19? We have the festivals listed here. Have they really been given at this point in time, or is this a precursor? In other words, the Feast of Matzos, I can understand. First fruits, maybe, but the ingathering, Sukkot, that hasn't happened yet. So I guess I'm asking the question: is this a section out of time?
Well, who said that? The section, the tradition actually said that this parsha was given after Matan Torah. Only the last section, there is a debate when Moses actually tell them to prepare themselves with going to the mountain. That the last portion of the parsha, only that part is disputed. Is it before or after? But the first part, the Mishpatim, most Mefarshim, or the Pshat is, it was given after Matan Torah at different time. So you can say that surely everything it says here about the holidays is really after Matan Torah, and during the time the travel in the desert. So it's after. When the dispute is before or after, again, it's only the last section when he tell him to go up to the mountain. So Chazal says it could be that this portion is before Matan Torah, and he entered a covenant with them. What was the covenant? To take them. Until now they were Bnei Noach, and now they circumcise themselves, the meme. And they become officially, so to speak, proselyte into they're going to accept the 613 mitzvot. So that's the last section of the parsha. But the entire parsha could be well done as it says in the book. Ramban said, why should I go chronologically? And chronologically, is after, actually, according to the Ramban, the entire section of Mishpatim is continuation of commandment number 10. What was commandment number 10? We should not covet. We should not covet. So he says the whole issue between man and man, which is in English it would be the right tablet. So the whole tablets there for men and men, and the bottom line, the last one is thou should not covet. So that's on the bottom, it means it's a basis. The coveting is a basis of everything between men and men. All bad things that happen between men and men. And he says, Parashat Mishpatim, the law, see it as a direct continuation on number 10. So this is all, that's Shita of the Ramban, and that's usually accepted. That the entire Shita is from Ramban. Abarbanel had a dispute with the Ramban, and Abarbanel says, not necessarily, why do you stick to the number 10? I can see it related to number 6, number 7, number 5. I can attach many of those laws to separate commandment on the right tablet between men and men. But all of the Farshim actually see it as a continuation of the Ten Commandments, because the Ten Commandments, the people were afraid, they were fearful, they couldn't stand the voices. So Hashem says, "Fine, go back to your tent, and I will tell I continue to tell Moses, and he will tell you what to do." That's the pshat.
Right. Tar, do you have something?
Is lust the same? Does it fall under covet?
I would think it's to covet something, to lust after. Yeah, I would think so, especially. Yeah. Rabbi, could you, we're almost about out of time, but why is "you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk
Oh,
attached to the first fruit of your soil? You shall bring the house of the Lord."
why is that attached
You know,
to
why,
what?
why is that buttress right up against first fruit? Like, that just seems random.
It seems random, yeah, it seems random. No, I understand, I understand your question very deep. I don't think there is a good answer for that. And classically, it's taken alone, stand alone. And it's
Yeah.
part of what the law that we said of taking care of animals and
Right.
being merciful to animals, especially for Noahide. Because Noahide, what did Noah did? All this in the ark.
Right.
He took care of the animals. So the issue of taking care of the animal right and animal suffering is very important to
Oh,
know.
yes.
Very important to know.
That is just interesting that, right? I mean, it's like it jumps out, and he continues on with, "and I'll send the angel ahead I'll send the angel with you, blah, blah, blah." And it's like, wow, that seemed awful random that all of a sudden he just mentions out of nowhere about the kid. It's almost like it's a thought, like, oh yeah, like we were talking about this. Let me remind you, it even goes as far as this when it comes to taking care of animals. That's interesting.
But you can't just say the same thing about much of this these 3 chapters.
Well, it
It's
seems-
more random digression. And I say that in a kind way.
Yeah, you're not meaning like digressed, but yes.
This is what pops into my head, and this is what I'm going to add.
That's
I'm
why
wondering-
Ross made the argument that it was like reading oral Torah.
Correct. And then you wonder when it actually occurs. When I see the chronology of adding Sukkot and gatherings and all of that in here, it's out of place. And I'm beginning to think, well, maybe this whole Mishpatim chapter really occurs after Yom Kippur, after he's come down from the mountain the second time. And now he's beginning to explain all of these things that he started out at Mara,
Right.
is where we were supposedly beginning to get these ideas. Now he's finally got, well, I got time. Let me stop my clock and let's go through some of this
Right.
stuff.
That's interesting.
There is a metaphor for that. Many commentators says it's an explosion, a sudden explosion of laws at random. As opposed, they argue against the Ramban. Ramban tried to, everything touches to number 10. Abarbanel tried to touch it to this and that. And others says, no, it's an explosion. Here, you're ready to hear me? Let me tell you, it's like, wow, but explosion is no order.
Hey guys, I just realized I have a doctor's appointment just popped up on my screen. So I either can dismiss class or let you guys continue on. What do you want to do? Want me to go ahead and go and you guys wrap it up yourself? No? Yes?
As you wish.
As
I'll
I
hang
wish.
around. We'll talk.
Okay,
We can
well,
talk off
people-
camera.
Okay. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and go and let you guys wrap it up in due time.
Indrid.
Have a good Shabbat.
All right, you guys take it easy.